Hello my friends, today we will take a look at the Zhiyun Crane V2 or version 2, probably the most popular motorized gimbal nowadays. So I'll try to explain the functionality, build quality and performance of this gimbal, and I will try to provide you with necessary information so that you can decide whether this gimbal or gimbals in general are suitable for you. In case that someone watching doesn't know what gimbal is, it is a motorized stabilizer that makes your footage really smooth. So Crane V2 comes in this cool plastic box filled with soft foam, so it protects the gimbal really well. In the box we have two batteries. This gimbal uses two batteries, so it is one set. Also USB charger, which is great because this way you can recharge the batteries from power bank or in car for example. Then there is the handle, lens support piece, two thumb screws, micro USB cable and the gimbal itself. Regarding the setup or balancing process, it was actually surprisingly easy. It took me about 5 minutes to do it on the first try. You just do it one axis at a time. You are just adjusting arm's length at the joints. I'll make separate video about how to do that, so stay tuned for that if you're interested. I've been testing it mainly with Sony A6500 and 16 to 50mm f3.5 to 5.6 kit lens, so the sample footage will mostly be shot with this camera. Setup process is also easy because of the new moving plate, and the use of thumb screws is also very good because you can set it up without any tools. Crane 2 feels very solid. It is made of metal, it seems to be really well made. Matte black finish is also very nice. It is also quite heavy, it weighs 950 grams without batteries, so you will probably feel the weight after some time. But if you can bench press 3 plates for at least a couple of reps, like I can, weight is not a big of a concern. Controls are located in the upper part of the handle. There is a button for powering the gimbal on. It also doubles as shutter button or video record button if you use control cable. There is a rocker that controls zoom if you have power zoom lens attached. Then there is mode button, I will explain that later in the video, and joystick that you can use to control the axis in different modes. There are 3 modes to choose from with this gimbal. First one is pan following mode. In this mode you can twist the handle and the camera will slowly follow movement of your wrist and start panning. Then you can use joystick to tilt the camera upwards or downwards. Second mode is the locking mode. In this mode gimbal does not follow movement of your wrist and you are controlling both tilting and panning by joystick. Third mode is the following mode. In this mode, camera follows movement of your wrist while panning, and it also follows your tilting of the handle to tilt the camera upwards and downwards. Joystick controls the roll axle in this mode. I will probably use the first mode the most. Second mode will also be useful in some situations. The third mode is in my opinion a bit cumbersome and difficult to use. Also, when you press the mode button 3 times, it will rotate the camera 180 degrees, so it is basically selfie or vlogging mode, and when you do this, the camera stays in one of the 3 modes that I previously explained, so that doesn't change. You can also control the gimbal using Bluetooth connection and smartphone app. It works great, and you can also adjust how fast it moves the camera in all 3 axes, which is really handy. For example, you can set it to very slow speed for landscape panning. You can also set up the strength of the motors. Here you can choose from 3 levels of strength, depending on the weight of your setup, and I will also make a separate video about the app. This gimbal can support up to 1800 grams or 4 pounds. But it will not work with setups lighter than 350 grams or 0.77 pounds, so theoretically it will work with Sigma 18 to 35mm and adapter, but I wasn't able to balance it so far because there isn't mounting thread on my MC11 adapter, so I will need to come up with some solution and I will also make a video about that. Zhiyun says that batteries will last 12 to 18 hours of usage, which is really great. I haven't had opportunity to test it myself yet, and as I have said, you can also recharge the batteries on the go using the included USB charger. And now let's finally take a look at how this gimbal performs. This is the first gimbal that I have ever used, so I cannot really compare it to anything else, but I will say right away that I'm pretty amazed by this thing. And if you haven't used a gimbal before, you will probably be amazed as well, because this makes a real difference. The footage that you get using this gimbal is super smooth, it really looks professional, it is completely different level than using any sort of image stabilization. Even Panasonic Dual Eyes 2 cannot come close to making footage this smooth. What this gimbal also does is that it gives you more options to be creative with the shots and to use the camera movement for storytelling. For example, you can go really low to the ground and use the ground as a foreground. You can start low and then move the camera up to change perspective. One of the main uses will be to follow your subject without introducing any sort of shake. Another way to use it is to use it instead of the slider. With a bit of a practice, you can get footage so smooth that it will be basically indistinguishable from slider footage. And the big advantage is that it takes much less time to set it up, and you can also make diagonal movements, and you have generally more option to make those shots. You can also kind of use it instead of a tripod in certain situations, probably not for the long shots because of the weight, and it is also easier and quicker than setting up the tripod, so it saves you time and it makes your workflow easier. And there are also some situations where there just isn't time to set up the tripod. Smooth footage is also an important part of getting that professional looking cinematic look that everybody likes, especially in combination with slow motion, so it can be a good tool for getting B-roll, for example for your vlogs or for travel videos. Speaking of traveling, as I have said, it is quite big and heavy piece of equipment, and carrying it all day is probably not going to be that pleasant. Also, depending on where you live, it may catch a lot of attention. For example, if I take it to the city here in Slovakia, which I intend to do, I'm sure that everybody will look at me, so that is also something to consider. But as I have said, the footage that you can get using it is worth it in my opinion. I've tested this setup with 3 cameras, Sony A6500, Panasonic G85 and Nikon D5500. All of these worked fine on the gimbal. The heaviest lens that I've used is 18 to 105mm Nikon lens. The stabilization effect is pretty similar on these setups. My favorite combination to use with this gimbal will probably be Sony A6500 and 16 to 50mm kit lens. This is really light setup, so it is really easy on the motors. Battery life will also be very good. Also, the autofocus is very crucial when you are using the camera on the gimbal, because manual focusing while the camera is on the gimbal is very cumbersome and uncomfortable, and the gimbal motors also don't like it when you are touching the camera while the motors are turned on. An A6500 with a kit lens provide great autofocus, and I will probably get Sigma 30mm f1.4 to use with this gimbal to get those cinematic shots with shallow depth of field. Panasonic G85 with 7 to 14mm f4 lens will be another setup that I will use on this gimbal. It is also very light for ultra wide angle zoom lens. The autofocus is not great, but with this lens almost everything is in focus all the time because of the hyperfocal distance. One other thing that I will try to find out is whether you should leave the in-body image stabilization or lens stabilization on while using the camera on gimbal, because in some cases it can interfere with the gimbal stabilization and it depends on specific camera. So I'll find out how does it work with Sony and Panasonic image stabilization, and I will let you know. So far I have found one thing that I don't like about this gimbal, and that is that in certain balance configurations parts of the gimbal can collide. But usually I can find some other way to balance the camera by moving the camera on the plate, for example. Also, unlike some other gimbals, there is no table tripod included, so I definitely recommend you to get one so that you can lay the gimbal on the table while balancing it. To conclude my initial thoughts about this gimbal, I have to say that I'm really amazed by what this thing does. In my opinion, it can make a real difference in the overall look and impression of the video or movie. It makes the footage really smooth, gives you more creative options, it helps you make the footage look cinematic and professional. The gimbal is well made, setup is really easy, controls and operation as well. I like the joystick control, app operation is cool as well. Overall, I think that if you have a couple of hundred of spare bucks, this may be the best way to step up your video quality, and I even think that it may be worth saving some money on the camera body or on other equipment, because this thing can actually make bigger difference. I have found really good deal on this gimbal. I paid 371 euros, and for that price I'm really very happy with this purchase. So that's it for this video. Thank you for watching. I hope that you liked this video and that you found it to be useful. Stay tuned for more videos and maybe consider subscribing if you don't want to miss my future content. I appreciate your feedback in form of thumbs up or thumbs down. If you would like to ask anything or share your opinion, please do so in the comment section, and see you next time.